This is My Geek Profile, a My Geek Culture podcast where we chat to various personalities of the Australian entertainment industry who have entertained us over the years. My name is Matt Fulton, producer, editor and host. I've been part of the media landscape for more than 15 years and I love finding out more about people who have been on television, movies, music, radio, just to see what makes them tick as well as entertain. If you've ever visited the Gold Coast or Dubbo in the last 15 years, you'll know the following guest. He's either spoken in your ear, consumed food in your presence, or shown you how to have fun overseas. Alo Baker loves to entertain. You'll hear him on the radio, making viral videos showing off the best places to eat and travelling with his mates to the US and getting up to shenanigans. Oh, within legal reasons, of course. He's already produced 2 travel shows for Foxtel and 7 Mate, Aussie Dream Livers Alaska and Texas, where he was given a few cameras and filmed his road trips with his mates to explore the excitement on what the locations have to offer. Now he has a new TV series out where he's flying solo, The Food Dude, a fun new series where Alo travels to various parts of Australia to consume food and festive delights. And I'm not talking fine dining, I'm talking all hands consumption. But why food? Other than radio, he has a background in the hospitality industry. But I'll let Alo explain more when he gave up his time to have a chat. Alo Baker, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
Now, you've got an extensive radio career, so how far back did you actually start in radio?
Back in 2008, I was at a leadership management conference with a girl who was driving the freebies car for a radio station in Dubbo. And she hated driving the car, giving out free stuff. And I said to her, how could you hate doing that? That sounds like the coolest thing ever. And she literally said to me, oh, if you want to give it a crack, why don't you come and give it a crack? And I rocked up the next day and gave out free stuff. And I think I was on air about 3 days later.
Oh, well, so were you doing casual stuff or part-time, full-time announcing, or did you build your personality up from there? Yeah,
so I started off not getting paid at all. I was just a volunteer driving the car, giving out free stuff. And I was doing that about twice a morning. So I'd go into the station at about 6 in the morning and I was running a pizza business outside of that and selling phone for Optus. So I'd go to the radio, drive the car, give out free stuff. By about 8:30, I was at the Optus shop opening for the day. And then by about 5 p.m, I was at the pizza shop until about 11 p.m. And that was pretty much my life. But I really wanted to do the radio and I just invested time into that being a volunteer. And, within about a week or two, that led to doing the afternoon show on a volunteer base. And I actually did that probably as a volunteer for about a year and a bit before I got hired as a full-time on-air announcer.
What stations have you actually worked for in Australia?
I've typically, for the majority of my career, I've only ever really worked for Southern Cross stereo stations. So I did do a couple of stints at Power FM for Grant in Nowra, but for the most part I started in Dubbo under Austereo and then moved over to Canada, did a little bit of radio in Canada, but took another Austereo job in Bunbury, Western Australia. I moved to Bunbury where I took up the West Australian network. That was my first network job. And then naturally the next job was the network job out of the Gold Coast hub in Broadbeach as they needed a network announcer and I had network skills. So jumped to Gold Coast and then that led to doing Gold Coast work days along with various other sort of stations remotely around the country, and then, I'm back where it all started, back in Dubbo.
Now, you mentioned Canada. Now, how long were you in Canada for, and what brought you to Canada? What drew you to Canada?
I just love North America. I went there on a stint once when I was younger with a mate, and we just loved everything North America. And when I first got married with my wife, we went back over, and I predominantly worked on summer camps, but summer camps in Canada have radio stations.
Oh, wow.
People might not realise, but they have full-on actual functioning broadcasting radio stations. So I got to do a little bit of radio in Canada, and that led me to be able to sort of not do a lot of work with other radio stations, but it led me to have connections with radio in Canada. So I got to, go into Virgin, radio in Toronto and check out those stations and meet a heap of really cool people in the biz, which is, I guess, 90% of the media industry is meeting people and making connections.
Even though you've got radio in your blood, now you've made TV shows. which
I have.
which.
I have.
So what background in TV do you have?
Well, I mean, previous to radio, nothing at all. In fact, I would attribute my entire television background to a backbone in radio, and I think that just comes from having an understanding of how broadcast media works, and a little bit of an understanding of how to create content, which obviously I learned in radio, and I was able to cross-apply that to TV, which is really, really cool. And so obviously being in radio, I had mutual connections across the board because everyone in media has worked in every other area of media at some point, and I was able to use those connections, I guess, to pitch shows, and from there, ended up with my own show, and now I've had a couple of shows on TV, and just going from there, I guess.
So the shows that you've created are Aussie Dream Livers in Alaska and also in Texas. Now, when you did Alaska, how was the preparation to create that show?
A lot of it, dare I say, I was winging it because we hadn't really prepared a show. So I'd made friends with the channel manager at National Geographic Channel, who at the time was Jerry Butterfield, and I just said to him, look, I have this idea for a show. And it wasn't anything highly intelligent or that hadn't been done before. So my mate and I, who I mentioned before, who I travelled across North America with, when we were travelling, we said we were doing a lot of things and filming it on our phones and whatever, and we were like, how cool would it be if we could actually make this into a TV show? And so we'd saved a bunch of that footage, and I'd actually made kind of like a reel, and we sent this to my friend that was the channel manager at National Geographic Channel, and he looked at it and said, look, I think you're actually onto something here. I think you could actually make a show. He's like, it might not be a big show, but he's like, it's a couple of guys having fun. Your humor's pretty clean. You understand media, so you understand, content and creating content. And he just said, how about you, see how you go. We were going to go over there on a holiday anyway. And so my mate and I, we booked our flights, and the guys at Nat Geo gave us, I think they gave us like 8 GoPros and a couple of cameras and said, look, go have fun, come back and, see what you come up with. And that was how the show started. And we came back and we showed them the content, and they worked with us a little bit on editing it. I had to learn a lot of editing skills. I spent a lot of time on YouTube. But from there, we showed them the content, and they thought, there was something really to it. And they said, look, it's not really right for National Geographic Channel, but we might be able to fit this somewhere else on Foxtel. And sure enough, we got the show on A&E, and that was the start of the Aussie Dream Livers journey.
A couple of years later, you went back and you checked out Texas.
So the process with that was Channel 7 actually said to us they really wanted to air the show, and that was because I'd made connections while living on the Gold Coast with they did local productions in Brisbane, which was Creek to Coast, and shows like that, Queensland Weekender, and I got to get in with the team, and I went along to a few things with them, and naturally from there that progressed to getting to know the right people. And so I just said, look, we did this show in Alaska if you want to air it, because it was coming to an end on Foxtel, and they're like, yeah, this is great. And they're like, do you want to do another season? We're like, yeah, sure. So that was how Aussie Dream Livers Texas was born. So we did another season, and got to go to Texas, and same kind of a thing. It's a couple of Aussie mates. We're traveling around. We're experiencing the culture, the food, meeting people, getting ourselves into trouble, rattlesnakes stuck in the car, and things like that. And it just naturally, it just organically became a second series to the show. And, the best part is just had a heck of a lot of fun doing it.
Now, watching the shows, I've noticed that you guys, your friends Johnny, Gimli, yourself, you just consumed food like no tomorrow. And I've noticed that you really didn't put on weight. So good on you for your calorie burning.
It's not fully true. I do, as I'm getting older, I am putting on weight. But, it's a shame because I do like eating a lot of food, which ironically is what my latest TV show is all about.
Well, that's what I was segueing into, which is the food dude. And, please explain what your new show is all about.
So the new series is, for the most part, it's a bit of an overview of Australian offerings in food. And, sure, I do the odd challenge or whatnot in there. There's 2-meter pizzas in there. There's 3-kilo steaks. There's all sorts of things like that. But it's also, predominantly, it's about just showcasing the best stuff that Australian foodie businesses have to offer. And so often people showcase the big city businesses. A lot of people don't often showcase the smaller regional Australian businesses that make really good food. And despite the fact that, COVID has hit, bushfires have hit, more recently flooding has hit, and so it's really took a hit to local businesses. And so this show is kind of about giving these businesses love, showing them off to Australia, and eating a heck of a lot of good food at the same time.
Well, is there any food that you do not like and yet you were encouraged to eat it for the show?
There's food. For the most part, I try to stay really open-minded. You're trying to be a food taster for the people. You want to give everything a bit of a try. It was the only thing that I'm a huge carnivore, and I'm not anti-vegetarian meals, but I will always choose a carnivorous meal over a vegetarian meal any day. There was a couple of times where I had some vegetarian dishes, and I was like, these are really, really good. So I never walked away from anything thinking, oh, that was horrible. I don't think I had one segment where that happened behind the scenes, but I certainly was relatively open to trying just about everything.
That's amazing, man. So because you mentioned at the beginning of our chat that you actually were part of you ran a pizza place, so you've always had a bit of a passion for food in your life, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Before radio, I ran a pizza place. I was a sushi, I don't know if you'd call it a sushi chef, but I made sushi, and I was the only sushi maker in the town I grew up in, and so if I had a sick day, there was no sushi. But so I learned to make sushi. I love pizza. I love all sorts of food. Growing up on a beef farm, my dad had pure breed, Angus beef. It was always high quality beef, and I think that just kind of started me on the journey of loving food. A lot of people might not agree with my love of food because I do love cheap, nasty food too. Like I'm not afraid to eat nasty, greasy, cheap food, but I also know what good food is, and I guess that started from my background.
Now, with COVID, that's obviously affected everyone travelling interstate or anything else, or not interstate, overseas. Now, say once the food dude is over, do you plan to create more seasons if that's possible?
Yeah, I'd love to. And COVID has been a real problem with filming because I couldn't get into certain states. I couldn't get into Queensland for quite a while. I couldn't get into Victoria until, honestly, the last 2 months. Which has been an issue when you've got a timeline of 6 months to film a show, and the country goes from being in full lockdown, and then each state is juggling. There was one instance where I was driving to Victoria. We're about 4 hours into a road trip to Victoria, and Daniel Andrews, who's obviously the guy running the state in Victoria, gets on the news and says he's closing the state down. So we had to turn around and drive back. We just spent 8 hours in the car and didn't even film one segment.
Oh, jeez.
There was a lot of moments like that where it was quite frustrating trying to film. We'd had all these, we'd had accommodation booked, and then we had to miss it because of, things were locked down, the states were changed. So that was probably the big frustration with filming this series. And predominantly that wouldn't be a problem because COVID's been such an unusual out-of-the-box thing. Moving forward, I like the idea of, making more series, and I mean, obviously I'm going to see how this series does and how people resonate with it. And I think the good thing about this particular show is that people can see themselves on it. They can see their aunties who are running these businesses, or their uncles, and the family members who are waiting on the tables and whatever. It's a real chance where everyone can have a bit of an ownership on the show, and I really like that. So moving forward, I really like the idea to make more seasons of the show, but I guess we just have to wait and see, how the Australian people take the show, I guess.
Say COVID's over and we can fly back overseas, we can do whatever we want, and your production company receives a unlimited budget to say, hey, make another season of Aussie Dream Livers. Where would you go?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I'd have to ask the boys. They'd be like, you can't make these decisions without us. We talked about a few different options. Obviously, Johnny is a dead-set Alaska lover. I mean, I am too, but he just wants to go back to it. He's like, we should do another Alaska season.
Yep.
Which none of us would disagree with because we love Alaska that much. There was talk about doing Alaska to Miami, like the Florida Keys, so a full diagonal drive right across the state, which would be really cool. But if we had to keep to the state theme, I don't know, maybe like a Tennessee, or maybe we could do a Hawaii or something like that. There's so many options. The best thing is in America, you've got at least 51 whatever seasons
yes.
you could do, really. So I don't know. I'd have to talk to the boys, but there's definitely a desire there to do it at some point.
Alo Baker, thank you for chatting.
Thanks so much for having me on the show today.
You can catch the Food Dude screening on 7 May. Check your program guide for more. Also, you can see his Aussie Dream Livers travel shows streaming on 7+. Thanks for listening to My Geek Profile podcast for mygeekculture.com.au. This podcast is produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.